Welcome everybody. Most of you know me. For those who do not, my name is Lisa Herrick. I started 31st Street in 2017 after our Mad King was elected the first time around, and we were all in a panic. We started with 30 people in my living room on 31st Street in Washington, D.C., hence our name. And we are now a group of over 2,500. And when I say that we're a group of over 2,500, I often think, well, it's 2,500 on the list, but how many people are actually active? But we actually use something called MailChimp to send out our newsletters, and MailChimp can track how many people open the newsletter, which is just a great little piece of data. And like 1,700 people open the newsletter every week, which is really a wonderful percentage. So we're a very active group of 2,500. So tonight we're going to hear from Adele Burke, who is the Director of Initiatives for Nebraska One House Strategies. She will tell us all about that. First, we will hear from Jim Shelton, our political leader of our group. We will have time for questions and answers towards the end of our program. And we generally try to end on time, but then some of us stick around for just sort of informal extra questions, chatting. So that is the program for tonight. But I just usually start off by saying just a few words of hello to everybody. And tonight, I guess I just felt like sort of reminding all of us why we're doing what we're doing, and why it's so important, even though everybody here knows why it's so important. But we're all here because whatever motivates us, we are able to get outside ourselves and devote time and energy to work on something beyond ourselves, bigger than ourselves. Everybody here believes in a country where every voice matters, where every ballot will be counted, where the power of the people is not just an idea, but it's a reality. And it's a reality that 31st Street enacts every day because we are just ordinary people. We all have learned so well that democracy is not self-sustaining. It lives and breathes through participation, like your attendance tonight. And tonight, you're helping us in the efforts to dethrone a billionaire extremist in Nebraska. All across this country, grassroots leaders are standing up for all of the things we believe in: constitutional rights, safety for our citizens, a balance of power in our government, access to health care, fair taxes on the wealthy, election integrity. And in order to make those aspirations real, we have to get the Senate back. We absolutely have to get the Senate back. And we believe there is a pathway to doing that, and Nebraska is on the path. I just wrap up by saying the story of our future is not going to be written by spectators to this madness. It's going to be written by the participants who are trying to change things. And we are all here because we've chosen to participate. So I thank you very much for that. And I'm going to turn it over to Jim. Oh, wait, before I do that, I want to thank our ambassadors who have agreed to invite friends and relatives, and they are here tonight. And here is the list of our ambassadors. Thank you so much. And Senate Circle is our co-sponsor. Thank you to them. But everybody, we really appreciate your doing this, because otherwise we would not have over 100 people here tonight. So thank you. Jim?
Great. Thanks so very much. I got a feeling I know most of you. A few of you may not know me. I'm the political analyst here, retired public health physician and epidemiologist, and this is my new life, and I'm grateful for it. I think it's actually given me some good purpose in life, and I put a lot of devotion into it. Now I'm going to go back to share my screen again. Oops. And begin with our, we have these sort of fundamental principles I'm not going to go into them really, except to just focus on one, which is play to win. And it's not just that we like to win, it's because winning, and in this case, picking up on what Lisa said, the US Senate. I mean, we're trying to do other things, but we're really kind of focused more on the Senate than anything else. And that's a lot of reason why we are here tonight. Now, there's a lot of reasons for pessimism, but in an electoral sense, there's a lot of reasons for optimism. We are winning, and we just need to do what we're doing bigger and better and stronger and more, in my opinion, and others. So here's just a few points. Trump's polling is so terrible. Um, the voter intensity is really high on our side. I witnessed that. We're winning special elections and regular elections also very decisively. We have great candidates at all levels, including at the lower levels. A lot of young people and other people stepping forward, and that makes our whole process work much better. And we're far better organized than we ever were before. And all right, so the probably many of you have seen polling numbers like this. I like this comes from Elliot Morris, who does sort of a composite, and I haven't updated it in a little over a week, I guess. But not only is he really underwater, but for the electoral point of view, this inflation, cost of living, affordability thing, where he's so bad, those are the voters, the sort of low information voters and so forth that we really need to win over. That's the most important thing to them, and they are coming over to us, as well are a lot of other folks. One way that I feel like we're optimistic is at this thing that where you ask people their preference for Congress, and it's a little squishy because people don't necessarily think that way that often or that much, and but I can tell you it's going really, really well. It's at a similar level to 2018 or possibly even a little better. So that's more evidence. And then from yesterday, I don't know if people noticed this, and I don't want to read too much into it. But as of this afternoon, if you look at the total number of people who voted in the Democratic ballot, it's about 150,000 more than in Texas than the Republican ballot. That's amazing, in my opinion. And the gap in percentage-wise is even more in purple North Carolina. So just more evidence that we're on the right track. Okay, but what do we need to do to win the Senate? And it is, a challenge because we have to win 4 seats. And these four that I've got listed here in the table are the ones that people are focusing on the most. I've kind of moved Texas up a little bit to the promising category now, and that's just my view. We can't depend we're winning the table on all those. And we can't assume that we're going to be able to win all the ones that we have to defend, like Georgia and Michigan and so forth. So the point is that we need to have more shots on goal or more things that we can try to do, more races. So for some time now, we have been promoting Iowa, Alaska, and now coming to Nebraska because they have what we think are winnable Senate races and other races. But we don't go about it the way a lot of folks do, which is to sort of vote, give money to the top level marquee candidates. We think that we can get a lot more mileage and more strategic impact by supporting what we call infrastructure, which is grassroots groups and social media and state parties. So that's what we're about in terms of Nebraska tonight. So we call this thing Nebraska accountability. So accountability is a little bit of a funny word, but it basically means we're going to hold them accountable and really put it to them, if you would, but by telling the truth. But so Nebraska voters really know what's going on with Pete Ricketts. And we do have, again, another one of these Super Bowl elections with U.S. Senate, House, governor, multiple other races. There's a synergy by doing this. So we like doing it that way. It is, of course, pivotal for the U.S. Senate. Nebraska is one of the places not only that's hurt by uh, tariffs and so forth, but rural voters in particular, I think it's a good argument. They've been hurt more than almost any other category, so that helps us. State governance is very unpopular, and in general, there's a sort of an anti-incumbency bias. It's even more in the country this year. That's helping us in a lot of places, but it will also here. We have encouraging polling. I'm going to show that to you. Most people are not focusing that much on these three states and Nebraska, also particularly, but we think we have a decent shot. And all this is important also because for 2028, we want to do the best we can in the Senate, but also in 2030 with redistricting, the blue states are going to lose congressional seats, and the red states, like Florida, are going to pick up. So we need to make incursions, if you will, in these states that have been pretty red up to now. And we have excellent Nebraska partners like Adele, who's going to talk to us in a minute. So here's some polling data. And it's actually pretty good because these two recent polls, fairly recent, very consistent with each other, show Osborne, statistically tied with Ricketts in both cases, identical numbers. But also notice that this is actually unfavorability. He's unfavorably viewed, if you will, by over half of the voters, according to these two polls. That is almost a death knell. I mean, that's a little strong, but that's really bad for an incumbent. So this is what is within the margin of effort. We can't guarantee we'll win this, of course, not at all. But we get things together, we have a decent shot at this, and that's why we're doing it. So I'm going to play a recording to you of something that comes from Alaska. It's the accountability that they've done against their Senator Dan Sullivan, just to give you a sense. It won't play out the same at all in Nebraska, but just to give you a sense of the kind of thing.
In Alaska, groceries already cost more than almost anywhere else. Senator Dan Sullivan voted for tariffs that drive those prices even higher. Fuel and heating bills keep climbing too, and our healthcare costs are soaring. But yes man Dan keeps saying yes to party leaders and voting for higher prices for Alaskans. Tell Senator Dan Sullivan to stop voting to raise our prices. In Alaska.
Okay, so you get the idea to some extent. Now, I wanted to just show one slide a little bit on sort of the donation flow, if you will, just so we're pretty creative about trying to figure out the best way to get the most cost-effective way to do these things through existing organizations. But your support goes to the Nebraska Donor Alliance, which is their so-called donor table, and it's going to go to some implementing partners that are going to do the lion's share of the work, but also some of it's going to go to One House Strategies, where Adele works to provide, a lot of technical assistance and advice. So don't be confused when you see who you're donating to when you go to the Act Blue site. All right, so our goal has been $125,000, but we've been joined by our partner, Senate Circle, and they've decided that they want to have a goal of $25,000. So, and all of this gets a 1-for-1 match, by the way, from the Nebraska donor table. So I'm happy to tell you that we're already at $97,000 because we've been raising money going through this at our monthly meeting, and people like you and your friends have already been donating. So, I'm hoping that we can kind of blow through what's now kind of like two goals, 125 and 150. Now, what we're asking, again, we're creative because there's both a non-tax deductible 501c3 part of this, which can be pretty partisan, and then there's a non-partisan tax deductible 501c3 part, and we're just raising money for the C3, for the C4 today, because that's actually better, more useful money, but also we can be more free to say what we want to talk about in the meeting. And we, of course, for your consideration, We'll have donation link in the chat. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Adele Burke.
Thanks so much, Jim. I really appreciate it. My name is Adele Burke, and I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my slides in just one moment. And let me know if you have any trouble seeing the slides. My name is Adele Burke. I'm the Senior Director of Initiatives with One House Strategies. I'm based here in Lincoln, Nebraska, and excited to talk to you all. My background is in political campaigns, in advocacy, and I have about 15 years of experience in Nebraska in the political policy and advocacy spaces, including at our local Planned Parenthood affiliate in policy work. So great deal of experience related to these kinds of accountability and political programs. Excited to share with you about the program we're launching that will make the case to voters to fire Pete Ricketts in November. But first, before I get into the meat of the accountability program, I wanted to just give a couple disclaimers about the nature of the program I'll be talking about. So today I'll be talking about a 501c4 program, as Jim mentioned. There's also a 501c3 program that will be happening around the same time that will be educating Nebraskans about Senator Ricketts' votes and positions. The program that I'm talking about today is the 501c4 program that will be more specifically making the case to fire Pete Ricketts in November. And that program is about a $1.2 million program in total for the C4 component. The C3 component is about $2 million. I also wanted to mention that the Donor Alliance is a 501c4, and that's the organization that's taking in the funds tonight, and does not accept earmarked contributions, but wanted to make it very clear that we plan to fully fund the program, including contributions that are coming in tonight. So getting into the meat of our accountability program, it is focused on Senator Pete Ricketts. In Nebraska. He is a very well-known figure in Nebraska politics. He has been around in politics in Nebraska for about 2 decades. He is the son of a billionaire family that founded TD Ameritrade. His family actually owns the Chicago Cubs, so you may be familiar with that. And Ricketts' own personal net worth is in the hundreds of millions, in addition to being the son of billionaires. He ran for Senate. His first run for office was in 2006. He lost to Democratic Senator Ben Nelson, but not without spending millions of dollars on his own campaign. And he ran again for governor in 2014, served as governor from 2015 to 2023, 2 terms, and then was term limited. Pete Ricketts is deeply conservative in his beliefs and in his policies. He is essentially a straight Republican Party line vote and holds some really extreme positions, especially on issues like abortion, where he believes in a complete ban on abortion and other types of very conservative social issues. So for our accountability program, we are trying to determine what are the most effective attacks or criticisms to raise of Pete Ricketts. And there are some things that we know from being on the ground in Nebraska that voters already have some awareness of, especially his wealth. But there's other issues that we think it would make sense for Nebraskans to learn more about, and that would be very persuasive if Nebraskans were more aware of those issues. Some examples of those include his votes to cut Medicaid and thereby hurt Nebraska families, and also hurting rural hospitals with those Medicaid cuts. His support for Trump's tariffs that hurt Nebraska farmers. So especially in a very rural state like Nebraska, and especially where so many of the rural voters are the more conservative and moderate voters that we need to reach with these messages, we think that the message on tariffs will be very effective. We also want to raise up the fact that Pete Ricketts has been pouring his own money into Nebraska politics for 2 decades. He has spent millions propping up candidates and spending on ballot initiatives, which are very prominent in Nebraska. Those ballot initiatives have included things like defeating medical marijuana multiple times. It has included proposing a abortion ban in Nebraska that did go into law. And then lots of other ballot initiatives that he has fought against. He's also, as I mentioned, done a lot to block access to medical cannabis in Nebraska. This is a really current issue for Nebraska because we voted on a ballot initiative in 2024. Over 70% of Nebraskans voted to approve medical marijuana, but that has continued to be blocked by Ricketts and Pillen and those in power. So those are going to be the issues that we focus on, but we also want to make sure that we are using some polling data and some additional research to determine what are the most effective attacks beyond what we might know on the surface being on the ground in Nebraska. So we really want to use a data-informed approach as well. Moving on to the actual tactics that we'll be using for our accountability program, we really are going to focus a lot on paid media. Paid media is both effective in terms of being able to blanket the state with one unified message, but then also being able to reach targeted voters with specific mediums. What you see in the map here is the state of Nebraska and the population of people who voted in the 2024 election by party. So you see big blue dot in the Omaha area and in Lincoln, and more sparsely populated throughout the rest of the state with the more moderate conservative voters. It's going to be really important that we're able to reach those moderate and conservative voters in more rural areas of the state because we know that they need to hear the message. They need to have a permission structure to vote against Pete Ricketts in November. So in terms of specific paid media tactics, we will be investing in broadcast TV. That will be in the Omaha and Lincoln media markets just to capture that large population in those urban centers. That will also include 3 ads currently budgeted, and then targeted digital ads. So this will allow us to reach outside of those Omaha and Lincoln media markets into specific subsets of voters that we think are going to be really crucial to reach. We also will be focusing on radio and mail. So in terms of radio, we're going to be doing general audience radio in those metro areas, like I mentioned, in addition to rural radio, which again is going to help us get to the more rural, moderate, conservative voters that we really need to reach with this particular message. And with mail, that is a great medium to be able to contact targeted voters, at least 3 pieces statewide, hoping to be able to expand that as well. So the next slide here is just a quick example of some of our past accountability work in Nebraska that our team has worked on at the state level. So you'll see examples targeting Governor Pillen and talking about the votes that our state senators have taken. So these are all part of the same, ecosystem of messaging, especially around economic issues. Another component of the program is going to be grassroots organizing and earned media. So part of this will look like engaging Nebraskans for medical marijuana, which is doing an organizing program statewide with town halls and other contact with folks who have signed the medical marijuana petition. And this is going to include not only Pete Ricketts, but it will also include Governor Jim Pillen and state legislators. But then once we have a little bit more data on the specific issues that we want to focus on for Ricketts accountability, we will be able to map out a more detailed organizing plan around recruiting storytellers. So, for example, in the healthcare space, are there people who are affected by Medicaid cuts that we can get to be on camera on ads? Earned media events highlighting particular issues, bird dogging, which is going to events where the elected official is and putting them on blast, essentially interviewing them on the spot, asking them the tough questions, and op-eds. In terms of the organizational vehicles and timeline, we will be, as Jim mentioned, fundraising into the Donor Alliance, and then the programming will run through Nebraska Groundswell, which is a 501c4 organization. And the timeline for the program is going to look like initial polling. Actually, the initial polling is going to start in March. Had to push that back a little bit. Recruit grassroots organizers and start creative production in March, and be up with paid media in April and May. And then reloading, reassessing, and going back onto paid media for July and August. I also wanted to, before I wrap up, talk a little bit about the context that this accountability program will be functioning within. So I mentioned Governor Jim Pillen. He is our incumbent governor in Nebraska, and he's up for election in 2026. He is deeply unpopular, has about 40% popularity with Nebraskans. So there will be an accountability program, C3 and C4, around him as well this year. There will be programs around state legislators to address the current supermajority of state legislators who are not values aligned. And then overlapping concerns to voters that will be addressed by all programs will be the issue of respecting the will of the voters, and other types of national legislation, like I talked about earlier, support for the Big Beautiful Bill, tariffs, those issues that we know are going to be really troubling to Nebraskans, that folks up and down from the top of the ticket to the bottom of the ticket have demonstrated that they support those unpopular issues. So that's it, and would love to answer any questions, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Adele. That was very impressive, very organized, very comprehensive. I am Aaron Hamburger. I do membership here at 31st Street Swing Left, and I also curate our questions for Q&A sessions like this one. So I've been collecting questions in the chat, and if you have more...
Aaron, Mary's supposed to go next.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mary, I didn't realize I was stepping on your toes. Mary, go ahead.
My toes will survive just fine. Thank you, Aaron. So my name's Mary Pence, and I just wanted to focus tonight on what we can do. I'm sure you're like me, you just feel bombarded with the burden of one appalling piece of news after another. And for my own mental health, I just find it essential to focus on what I can do. So, turning for some inspiration, and Jim's going to put up a picture to illustrate where this inspiration is coming from, turning to Governor Abigail Spanberger, who, by the way, 31st Street helped elect to Congress in 2018. In her terrific speech just recently, she said, "The United States is founded on the idea that ordinary people could reject the unacceptable excesses of poor leadership, band together to demand better of their government, and create a nation that would set an example for the world." Governor Spanberger reached all the way back to George Washington, who warned about the possibility of cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men rising to power. Listen to those words: cunning, ambitious, unprincipled. Quite apt, don't you think? She further quoted Washington, who encouraged all Americans to unite in a common cause to move our nation forward. And Jim, you could take that picture down if you want to, or may I ask that you do so? So our cause tonight is flipping the United States Senate. Our cause is to replace the spineless, self-interested senators with senators who care about the rule of law, who care about our Constitution, who care about ordinary people. And tonight we focus on Nebraska, where we can replace a man who votes for tax cuts for billionaires over health care for working people. So the specific thing that you and I can do tonight is to contribute from our financial resources to get out the truth about Ricketts. Most of us don't live in Nebraska, so we can't knock on doors or talk to our neighbors, but we can contribute money. As my husband Dan and I thought about this moment, we're 8 months out from the midterm elections. We considered the difference our early money can make in the flippable state of Nebraska. And we decided to contribute $3,000 to the Hold Ricketts Accountable effort. We are mindful that we are fortunate to be able to contribute that amount, knowing that not everyone is. But I share that number with you in the hope that it will inspire you to stretch to make the most significant connection you can make. We here on this call tonight are ordinary people who, when we band together, can make a difference in getting our country back on the path to sanity and decency and integrity. We want in November to look back and say that what we did on March 4th made it happen. We helped flip the Senate. Thank you so much.
Great words, Mary. That was excellent. And definitely, I'm sure that is motivating people to donate to this effort. Okay, so now it is indeed time for questions for our guest speaker, Adele. Before we get into some of the details with your effort, someone in the chat asks, would someone kindly, clearly explain the differences between C3 and C4 donations? What are the limits, and do donations to C3 accounts count as a restriction to how much you donate to a C4? So,
I can start, and then if I miss anything, would appreciate it, if others fill in. But a 501c3 it focuses on nonpartisan, non-political education. So a 501c3 accountability program doesn't have the ability to talk about how people vote in November, or make a more specific political case. But a 501c3 can take contributions that are tax deductible and not reported. And then a 501c4 organization has the ability to do some political work. Some portion of their work can be political, and also public welfare. And primary purpose. So the political portion can make the argument that people should fire Pete Ricketts, for example, encourage them to vote against Pete Ricketts. A 501c4, in contrast, is not a tax deductible donation, but their donors are also not disclosed. So
great.
Anything else that folks want to add, they're welcome to do that.
Great. I hope that was very clear. All right, let's get to Ricketts. A question. Did moderate conservative voters support Ricketts in 2024, and what issues resonated back then?
Yeah, so in the 2024 election, looking back, it's really a lot of the same reasons why folks voted for Trump in such large numbers. At the time, this focus on the rising costs of living and affordability, and then also concerns about immigration, right? And but what we've seen, and Jim did a great job of showing Trump's approval ratings over the last year have been dropping on both affordability and on immigration. And so we think that there's a lot of room to make the case to those same voters that the promises are not being kept. And in fact, in some ways with tariffs, they're actually in a worse financial situation than they were previously.
Great. You were talking about the ad campaign that you're thinking about running and on television especially. And a few of the questions were interested in rural audiences. And so one of the questions was, what messages are you going to present on rural radio? Does it differ from the message to Omaha and Lincoln? And are there large media deserts in rural areas? And if so, what are the best ways of reaching those rural voters?
Yeah, so on the first part, I really think issues around the tariffs are going to be really resonant with people in rural areas. So, maybe less relatable to Omaha and Lincoln, conservatives, but certainly very relatable to the more rural audiences. So that's one example. But when we do a little bit more research and polling, one of the ways that we'll be able to segment voters on issues is by region. So we'll be able to tell if there are other issues that are more salient in those areas too. And then when it comes to, radio deserts, we're gonna try to do our best to fill that in with the rural radio network radio ads. So, acknowledging that there's always going to be some voters that are not reached that way. But that's also why it's important to have the more targeted mediums like streaming ads and mail as well.
Great. I was also curious if you could talk a little bit more about these different audience segments that you're trying to reach. For example, maybe college students or African American or Latino audiences. I'm curious how these different messages might be tailored to them.
Yeah, I think we are going to try to be very thoughtful about which segments of Nebraskans we prioritize, recognizing that there's certain audiences that already understand and believe that Pete Ricketts should not be reelected, right? So we're really trying to get at the audience that needs to have permission, basically, to not vote for Pete Ricketts because they're not already in that bucket. And that's going to be the more conservative and rural audiences, right? That might be non-college educated audiences. It might be disproportionately men. So it's really going to be informed by some of the polling that we do, like which audiences are specifically the ones we need to target more. But then there's also things that we know from the 2024 election results that we can probe into. So I could talk about targeting all day, but that's kind of how we think about different audience segments.
Great. Okay, another question that people had is, so what is the source of Ricketts' success and what makes you think that he can be defeated?
So I think two main things. One is he has a lot of money and is willing to spend it to shore up his political allies, pour it into his own elections, defeat his political enemies. And then the other piece is that he has an R next to his name on the ballot, right? Because of our partisan elections. I think the combination of those two things is enough to get a lot of Republican folks elected in statewide in Nebraska. But I think that there is a really interesting dynamic going on with this particular year and Senate race with Dan Osborne as a nonpartisan that could give voters second thought about the party piece.
Okay. There have been a few questions in the chat, and maybe Adele or Jim or whoever feels like is the right person to talk about this. It's about why not just donate directly to Ricketts's opponent Osborne, and then a couple people are saying, can someone say something about Osborne? He's an independent, right? Which he is. Are we sure he will caucus with Dems? Um, Jim or Dell, whoever wants to take that one, that seems to be something that a number of people are asking.
Yeah. Oh,
You,
go for it, Jim.
um, so it's Dan Osborne who did very well last time. And the dynamic, as Adele has said, has changed a lot. He's an independent. He's a labor union leader, blue collar, really appeals to a lot of those kinds of voters. If you haven't heard him speak, he's very motivating and so forth. And I think a lot of people connect with him. If you look at his position on issues, I would say they are very pro democracy. Some people might even say he's sort of more pro-democracy than Mary Peltola in Alaska, for example, who has some environmental issues. I think he's sticking to the point that he's an independent, that he's been independent all his life, and he's not said that he is going to caucus with the Democrats. But you can be sure that on things like Supreme Court nominations and these other bozos that come before, excuse me, uh, the Senate for confirmation, he will be tough. He will vote against those kinds of people. That's my view.
Something that somebody said in a previous conversation like this really resonated with me, which is he's promised not to caucus with the Republicans either. So that means it's like one less vote for John Thune as majority leader. So that also helps with our math. Adele, what were you going to say?
Oh, I would also add, on a lot of the issues that we collectively care about, he has been public about supporting access to abortion, for example. He is very he supports working people's issues. So he is very opposed to corporate tax breaks and those types of things. As Jim mentioned, he's a union leader. So while he is not promising to caucus with the Democrats or Republicans, I think there's a lot of values alignment that there just isn't with Ricketts.
Great. Okay, let's resume our questions. And again, if people have other ones they want to leave, feel free to do that in the chat. I am collecting them. One person has said for you, Adele, two possible storytelling and outreach opportunities. Nebraska's VA hospitals and veterans have been hurt by federal cuts to the VA and staffing. There have also been federal cuts to Social Security staffing. Do you know if there have been cuts to local Social Security offices in Nebraska, and is that something to stress with Ricketts?
I don't specifically know about that, but I think that's a really great point and something that we should look into, especially because of the segments of the electorate that we really think we should be talking to.
Great. Okay. Glad we're providing a little inspiration for you too. Okay. Well, someone's asking, can you tell us about Ricketts's attempt to place someone named Forbes on the ballot as a Democrat who is not really a Democrat?
Yeah, so there is a strong reason to believe that the Ricketts camp has gotten a Democrat into the Senate race. He is a pastor, a rural pastor who is extremely anti-abortion. He was collecting petition signatures for a local anti-abortion ordinance that would have completely banned abortion in the municipality, which may or may not be constitutional, but regardless, he's very extreme, and yet is filed to run as a Democrat as of Monday, the filing deadline. So there's I think some reason to believe that he got in the race as a spoiler.
Mm. So will there need to be some education on that as well?
Yeah, I know that the Democratic Party has already been talking about the dynamics in that race. So yeah, I think that's being talked about.
Okay, it's good to know. Another question, why do billionaires like Ricketts and Trump have appeal for rural voters?
I actually think there might be more reasons, and well, we've actually seen in the polling that Trump is more popular than Ricketts is in Nebraska. I think Trump is actually more appealing because he at least talks like a populist, right? I think he has this really like straight shooter kind of style in a way that Pete Ricketts even doesn't. He very gives off this like CEO vibe. But I think the reason it's appealing is mostly just because of the party label that they have.
Okay. We're getting more questions about Osborne, and I think there was a piece of the question earlier that we didn't quite address, which is what's the rationale for not donating directly to Dan Osborne as opposed to this effort? So again, Jim or Adele, whoever wants to take that one.
I'll take it. I donated. I donated the max. I would, that's my personal position. I think it makes a lot of sense.
You donated to Osborne, you mean?
Yes.
Yes. So you're saying both and, not either
Yeah,
or.
and it's an and.
It's an and. It's an
But we're
additional.
not doing that tonight here. That's you go somewhere else for that.
Okay.
There's no contribution limits to the C4, I will say. So
Okay, so good. So once you've maxed out your support to Dan Osborne, you're looking for something else to do. This is a possible thing. Quick question. Has Osborne taken a pro-choice position?
yes. I don't know if he necessarily describes himself as like using those words, but he opposes bans on abortion.
Okay, great. Another question. Is it possible to outspend Ricketts? What makes us think Nebraskans are just fine with what Ricketts is doing?
Um, on the question of spending, I think I will say that I don't think it's possible to outspend Ricketts. I think it just matters that you stay competitive in the media environment, right? The Nebraskans need to be able to hear that there's an alternate message, that there is a justification to not vote for Ricketts and to still be considered conservative, right? And that's the
Great. Okay. Has the loss of soybean sales to China, is this having a negative effect on Ricketts?
That's something that we definitely want to test. We don't know for sure if it is, but soybeans are really important to Nebraska economy. So yeah.
Mhm. Great. There's been some questions in the chat also about exactly how much money a person can donate and what the legal limits are. So David Henry actually supplied a really good answer in the chat for anybody who wants to know about that. So I just thought I would lift that up.
That's for federal elections, just to clarify what he's saying.
Right,
And
for
as
federal
Adele
elections.
said, for what we're doing, there are no limits.
Exactly, exactly. So you could donate, max out your donation for Dan Osborne or Mary Peltola or Osborne and Peltola, and then donate to this as well. So it's like an additional vehicle. And by the way, if somebody could put that link in the chat once more for the donation, that would be really helpful. Okay, another question. What was Osborne's biggest challenge in the last election, and what is the biggest hurdle now?
I think I saw someone put in the chat earlier that it was people recognizing a little bit too late that the race was really competitive. I think that was a big piece of it with Osborne. There was a lot of spending at the end of the race, but yeah, I think there's more awareness now that Nebraska can be a battleground state. I think the polls that Jim showed earlier just kind of give you a great demonstration of how even the race is right now.
Great. And then do you know why the DSCC has not identified Nebraska as a state to flip, but has identified Alaska? I'm sorry, has not identified Nebraska, has identified Alaska, Georgia, Iowa, and so on.
My first guess is that Osborne's not a registered Democrat. But I think we're used to being a little bit overlooked in Nebraska, and I think we are still very competitive, regardless of what the folks in DC say.
Awesome. Great answer. Okay. What about the sentiment about ICE? Is that having an impact on farm seasonal workers? The questioner says, I understand meatpacking districts, especially in Northeast Nebraska, are struggling, as are farmers.
Yeah, there's some really interesting things in the news in Nebraska around ice and meatpacking plants. There's a big plant that just shut down in Lexington, Nebraska, and that was like the major industry in that community, and is putting a lot of people out of work. Which Osborne has been talking a lot about the impact in that community, but by big ag, right? And then the other piece is that there's an ICE detention facility that moved into rural Nebraska, that the state government allowed ICE to use a facility there. So, these are all really salient issues in Nebraska. And I think, again, polling and then some of the media that we use is going to tell us how Nebraskans are reacting to that.
Okay, great. Another person has a concern that Republicans will use AI deepfakes extensively this year, perhaps at the last minute to discredit their opponents. Are you planning for that? And if so, how?
Um, that is something that I increasingly worry about, the use of AI in campaigns. I don't know that we have like a specific plan for that, but I think being ready to kind of counter any false claims with our own paid media is really important.
Okay. For the Senate race, will the candidate have to have a majority? Will there be a runoff? If not, how does it work in Nebraska?
Yeah, we don't have a runoff, so just the majority.
Okay. Or a plurality?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And then how much more influential are all the campaign efforts like TV, print, radio, et cetera? I always love radio. I'm a big fan of radio. Now versus in the summer. Can you talk about the greater impact of early donor money?
Yeah, actually, the general principle is that the later you spend, the more effective it is. But there's also considerations around setting a narrative early and being able to stay competitive. So, for example, Senator Ricketts has been on TV since like last fall and spent millions of dollars on his campaign since then. So it's really about trying to, not have the narrative totally get overtaken.
Mhm. It is interesting how much money he has spent, and yet his popularity seems to be very stuck in the mud, as it were. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Okay, we are almost out of questions. I just have one more of my own that I thought I would throw out there, and then we will hear from David Henry, who's going to offer a formal close and thanks. But I wanted to sort of ask you to put on your imaginary, guru hat and imagine what do you think is going to be the decisive factor in the election in Nebraska this fall? Like, how do you see things playing out, and what do you think could be the thing that really tips the difference?
I really think at the end of the day, it's about this narrative of Ricketts being in the pocket of wealthy folks. And I think it's making the case to Nebraskans that Ricketts is not one of them, that really he is for the elite and not for working people. So if I had to guess like what the most resonant message will be, it'll be something around that.
Great. Okay, and a couple more folks are chiming in the chat. But as we say in 31st Street, we like to kind of stick to our schedule, be on time. But we will have some time after the formal close of our program to continue chatting. So if your question hasn't yet been addressed, don't worry, we will get to it at a later point. In the meantime, I want to hand the mic over to David Henry, who has some thoughts to share with us.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. And thank you, Adele, for a great presentation. Really excited about Nebraska. Really appreciate 31st Street's partnership. And really appreciate all of you for coming tonight and supporting. We're very close to meeting and exceeding our goal. And the goal will stay open. So if there's folks you want to reach out to after this event, tell them what you've heard, tell them about this opportunity. And I think what's so exciting is, success breeds success. And we see that with Osborne last year, how he stunned the country, got a lot of support late. And what we're doing tonight is we're greasing the runway for him to take off even sooner. And our Your Fund donations now will really be leveraged as more and more people catch on to the importance and the potential of this race. So thank you to all of you for coming, and thanks for 31st Street for partnering with us. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for partnering with us. And thank you to everybody for coming tonight. We will stay on for a few minutes, but the formal program is over and we've raised a ton of money tonight. Thank you so much for your generosity.
Yeah, we're
And
just shy of 120,000.
Wow.
amazing.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for the donations and the super donators. I saw a few of you donating multiple times. It's amazing. So thank you so much.
Hey, Aaron, this is Mary Pence. Could I just highlight something that David Henry just said? Is that not only are the dollars that we're contributing tonight going to be put to such good use, but being able to raise this money makes this effort more credible so that it attracts other groups interested in supporting their work. So we're sort of doing two things at the same time, providing direct support and providing what I would call credibility or gravitas to this work. So I just wanted to highlight that important point.
Okay. And someone said, how long do we have to donate? One person is still figuring things out. And I see David said the donation links will stay open. So I presume for a little while. So that person has, what would you say?
I mean, they can copy the donation link and use it anytime. So,
Good point.
Good
Copy and
point.
paste. Copy and paste the
or
donate
go to
link.
our website, any of that.
Absolutely. I'll put our website in the chat once more too. If there's anything that you sort of missed or you want more information about, we usually put all kinds of links and things on our website. So, a question that came in actually directly to me for Adele was, do you coordinate with media groups like Courier?
I have been in touch with somebody, I've heard from somebody who has been working in that Courier network and is interested in setting something up in Nebraska. So not directly yet, but sort of interested in being part of that ecosystem.
So we
Great.
understand the Courier is sort of on the verge of trying to get things going in Nebraska, among a number of other states.
That's great news. Okay, a couple other questions from the chat earlier. So many candidates describe themselves as not the other guy. What does Osborne say about what he wants to accomplish?
I think there's a lot of policy issues that he has around stopping like financial corruption in Congress, and put me on the spot, but I think it's really the economic justice issues and the workers' rights issues that he's been talking about proactively and consistently.
He has a really good answer to people asking him about what his stance is on immigration. He is really in favor of sane, wise border control, and he's also really protective of people who are immigrants in Nebraska who have been working in factories. Factories and farms have huge numbers of immigrants and would be decimated if ICE came in and rounded them up, which ICE has actually already started doing. So Osborne has, really sort of a good stance on that one. I think it's a good one for Nebraska because it's moderate. It's I wouldn't call it, lefty, but it's sane and protective, I think.
Speaking of the farm issue, someone in the chat was saying, as farmers, we can tell you many family farmers are angry about trade interruptions. We build relationships, and Trump, supported by Ricketts, wiped them out. And they're talking about China is now building trade relationships with other countries and kind of taking away those markets that people worked so long to build. So just another sort of strike against Ricketts. A question that one person had, and Adele maybe can speak to this. How will the Ricketts messaging support accountability issues for the House of Representatives races? Will there be any spill down there?
Yes and no. So in the Congressional District 2 race, the blue dot Omaha race that folks talk about in Nebraska, Don Bacon's not running for re-election in that race. So there won't be like direct votes that necessarily correlate to that race. But I think a lot of like the Republicans up and down the ticket have tied themselves to specific issues that Congress and the Senate have voted on. So I think there's like kind of a nexus on a lot of these issues.
Great. And anyone who happens to know the answer to this, where does Osborne stand on environmental issues? That was a question that just came up.
I don't have any specific knowledge of his policy positions on that.
He's
So
not a climate denier, climate change denier. I mean, he believes in science. I don't know
Okay.
specifically what his stance is.
That sounds like an improvement over Ricketts. Adele, do you know Ricketts' stance on environment? Is it pretty much just standard Republican?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he has not demonstrated really any independence from the Republican Party line on pretty much anything.
Mm-hmm. Great. So anything has to be better than that for sure. Okay. Any other questions that people had before we wind up for the evening?
Yeah, actually, there was one for Adele. Could you drop your contact info into the chat? A couple of people wanted to reach out to you and be involved.
Yeah, I think she did earlier, but Adele, if you want to put it in one more time, be great.
Yep, I just dropped that in the chat.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Adele. Really wonderful presentation. Great information. And you're very welcome.
We passed our 125. We're at about 127,000.
Woohoo! That's amazing. Thank you
Incredible.
everybody so much.
Wow. Wow.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Blown away. Blown away. That's
That
amazing.
smile on Jim Shelton's face.
Yeah.
Roll up your sleeves, Adele.
Thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate the support and the time to talk with you all.
Awesome.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Night. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.